So James Gunn's long-awaited, highly anticipated Superman movie recently released. To say that this movie had a lot of hype and expectation around it is an understatement. It's not only a reboot of Superman, but it's also the first film in a complete reboot of all DC movies. James Gunn, who has made his name directing Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, has now been placed as head of DC Studios and the creative lead in the reboot of DC, and his first task was to tackle one of the most recognized and beloved superheroes of all time. And on top of all that pressure, there was an underlying pressure from the movie industry as a whole, as the superhero movie genre that dominated the box office during the 2010s, mostly due to Marvel's success. Ever since the 2020 pandemic, the love for superhero movies has faltered, as they have seemed to make less and less money at the box office, as well as just having less hype in general than they used to. People started to wonder if the era of the superhero movie was officially over. So it seems like 2025 is the defining year that would decide if superhero movies would have a resurgence or die out. James Gunn was made to be the chosen one, the messiah that would keep superhero movies alive. And so after seeing the Superman movie, did it live up to my expectations? Well, after seeing it, my opinion on that matter is a little mixed. Kinda yes, and kind of no. So let's get into it. Now, I'll be the first to come out and admit that I've never really been the biggest Superman fan. It's hard for me to get invested in a superhero that is way too overpowered, and his only defining characteristic is being good and doing the right thing. I've never found the character interesting. It's like, yeah, it's easy to have that viewpoint when you're a literal god amongst normal human beings. You should be working your ass off to fight off the bad guys every day. You're more powerful than they are. I've always been a fan of more grounded superheroes, like Batman, who is DC's greatest character by far in my opinion. But anyway, I've never really read any of the Superman comics, and the only movies I've seen were the Henry Cavill ones, which I liked. They were fine, but I never loved them. But after seeing the trailers for James Gunn's Superman, I was intrigued. I like the feel and look he was going for, a more comic booky, bright look as opposed to the dark and gritty version that Zack Snyder was going for, which I didn't think fit Superman at all. So getting into the film, let's start with what I liked, and as I just said, the look of the film, the cinematography is great. The art and production design seems part of a coherent vision of this universe, and it definitely looks unique, unlike a lot of recent MCU movies that have no definable look or characteristic. The CGI is mostly good, and I also like how Gunn chose to shoot the movie. They do this thing where they get right up in the character's face with a really wide-angle lens. They do it a lot, and at first it's a little bit jarring, but as the movie went on, it became very immersive, especially in big battle aerial scenes, where it feels like you're flying around with Superman very close to the action, as opposed to how they shot it in Man of Steel, where they decided to show the point of view from very far away using long lenses and zoom shots, which I didn't think worked as well. And for casting, I think for the most part, they nailed the casting. David Corenswet is good. He's got the look of Superman, which is definitely the most important part in casting Superman. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane was good, too, I guess. But personally, I liked Amy Adams as Lois Lane better. But Brosnahan, she did fine. And personally, I don't think she was utilized to all of her best abilities.
When I say that I want these things, I mean that I want them.
But my favorite casting choice by far was Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. He was absolutely perfect for this role. From here on out, whenever I think of the character of Lex Luthor, I will always think of Nicholas Hoult. Hoult is one of the best actors working right now, in my opinion. He has a lot of range, but when I saw him in the trailers, I wasn't buying it. But oh boy, did he prove me wrong. He was able to portray Luthor and his motives that make him both despicable, but also understandable. Like, you can understand why he thinks the way he does, why he despises Superman and wants to kill him. Because Luthor, who is a super genius that seems to always think everything calculated and rationally, he sees Superman as a threat to him and all of mankind. All of Luthor's deception in the movie he sees as justified. Holt portrays him with both hatred and obsession over Superman, with just his subtle facial expressions, and he absolutely nailed the role. Some others I liked were Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern. This is a unique look for Green Lantern, absolutely nothing like the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern. And Fillion brings this cocky attitude, but kind of a lack of self-awareness, and it's just hilarious. I have no clue who Hawk Girl
you gotta give him that hawk to
and Mr. Terrific were. I had no idea they were even comic book characters before seeing this, but after watching it, they added a lot to the movie. Especially Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. This guy just absolutely steals every scene he's in and has some of the funniest lines and possibly the best fight scene in the whole movie. And there's a lot of other good minor characters like Terrence Rosemore as Otis, Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, and Sarah Sampow as Lex Luthor's girlfriend, to name a few. Another good aspect of the movie I liked was the music. This soundtrack bangs. It has that classic feel with variations of John Williams' classic Superman theme, as well as a lot of new sounds that are able to make it feel fresh, but also give you that classic uplifting superhero sound. And of course, with all James Gunn's films, there are some great needle drops at the perfect times, especially in that Mr. Terrific fight that I mentioned earlier. Another aspect about the film that works well but also kind of hurts it at the same time is the pacing, and I'll explain what I mean by that later. There are no really long, slow scenes in the movie, except for maybe the scene where Lois is interviewing Clark as Superman, which is used to give a lot of context to the story, and we'll get to this scene later, but overall, Gunn utilizes every second of this movie and never left me boring watching it. So those are my overall positives I took from the movie. So now let's talk about what I didn't like. Firstly, one thing I noticed about the movie that disappointed me, the movie tried way too hard to try and be funny all the time. This is by far the most unfunny of all of James Gunn's superhero movies, which was the strength of the Guardians trilogy and the Suicide Squad. Like, I'm telling you, every couple of minutes they try and jam in or set up a gag or joke. In the packed IMAX theater I was watching in, I'm not kidding you, they laughed out loud maybe a few times. Like, I don't think I actually laughed out loud once at any of the jokes. They try and set up Crypto the dog as a big joke. It's right in the opening of the movie. And it's funny the first time. It's like, oh, look, the cute dog. Oh, there he is. He's so rambunctious. Oh, he's tearing up the Fortress of Solitude. Isn't that funny? And then they just do that over and over and over throughout the whole movie. And it got old quick. And then the other one was the gag with Jimmy Olsen. This average looking guy apparently had a fling with Lex Luthor's hot ass girlfriend. And she's obsessed with him. That's like the thing of the joke. And that's how he's able to leverage her to get evidence against Luthor that eventually leads to his downfall. And it was just a little bit funny the first time, but they kept doing it over and over, the same trope. Like, oh, super hot girl, she's obsessed with this average guy. Oh my god, he doesn't want her though. I just wish it was me, to be honest.
It should have been me!
I was just overall surprised with how many of the jokes just did not land in this movie. The only one I genuinely, I think, laughed at was Lex Luthor's army of monkeys bot farming on computers in the Pocket Universe to talk shit about Superman online. I thought that was pretty funny. The other negative thing, like I was saying before, was the pacing. Having a lot of scenes with quick and snappy editing, it helps move the story along and keeps the audience engaged. But the flip side of that is you get no time to digest or even understand what's happening sometimes because it's moving so quick. So at the beginning of the movie, we get some text giving all the background of this Superman. This movie doesn't waste time showing Superman's origin on Krypton or how he got to Earth or how he was raised by human parents, how he became Superman, any of that. Which on one hand I like because at this point that's been done multiple times before already. James Gunn even recently explained this decision, saying that he thinks there's 3 scenes from superhero movies that no longer need to be in those movies, which is Superman's origin, Bruce Wayne seeing his parents being killed, and Peter Parker getting bit by the radioactive spider. That's all been done multiple times, so we really don't need to see it. So I kind of agree with that. But we get everything explained up to this point through this text wall. 30 years ago, Superman arrived on Earth. 3 years ago, Clark Kent became Superman. 3 weeks ago, Superman stopped the country of Boravia from invading another country. 3 hours ago, Superman lost his first fight. So that's the setup before the movie begins. This text is meant to give us all the backstory we're supposed to need to know to get caught up on where Superman is in the story. And I get this would have made the film way too long had they shown us all that instead of just writing it in text, but they could have shown us something. Going forward throughout the whole movie, I had so many questions about the details of this summary from the beginning. Wait, what the hell is Boravia? What is that? Bad guy dictatorship country. Okay. Why did Superman intervene? No time to explain. We have to move on. Okay. How did Superman lose his fight? We can't explain that either. He just got his ass beat. Okay. Superman. Oh, he has a dog. How does he have a dog with superpowers? No time to explain that either. We have to go. We have to go to the Fortress of Solitude. Oh, cool. How does this work? Did Clark make this himself? Is it what he came to Earth on from Krypton? Stop asking questions. Look at the robots. Oh, wow. Super robots. Did Clark make these or were they from Krypton? No time for questions. Have to move. I'm telling you, this movie throws so much stuff at you so quick. A lot of it is cool, I will say, but so much that you have no time to question anything. No time for backstory, no time for context. You're just thrown right in the middle of it, and you have to figure it all out as you go. Then we go with Clark to work at the Daily Planet, where we meet Lois Lane, and they keep their relationship vague in this scene. Are they dating? No? Okay, I guess not. Then the next scene, Clark is in Lane's kitchen, and then you're like, oh, okay, I guess they are dating. How long have they been dating? And then we find out it's like 3 months, and I'm like, okay. Only 3 months, so I guess they're not serious about each other at this point. They're just kind of casually dating in a situationship, like Lois even says. This whole part confused me. Why would Gunn have them be dating for only 3 months? I feel like they should have been either dating for years at this point or having not been dating at all yet. I don't know, 3 months is an odd amount of time. Like, I don't know, if I had been dating my coworker for only 3 months, I definitely wouldn't trust her enough to tell her that I'm Superman. And I sure as hell wouldn't let her interview me as Superman. Like, their dynamic of the relationship just does not make sense to me at this point in the film. And speaking of the interview scene, as I said earlier, this is the only scene in the movie that kind of drags. I mean, it drags a while. So Lois brings up how Clark always interviews himself as Superman and publish it, and of course, he's always going to make himself, Superman, look good. So she's like, I'm a real journalist, you should let me interview you as Superman. And obviously Clark is trying to get laid that night, so he's like, sure, ask me anything you want. And of course, they get into an argument about whether he should have intervened in the Boravian invasion and what his motives were, and if he was doing it for the right reasons, if it was reckless. Lois, it just sounds like you're super jealous of my awesome powers and abilities. But as I said earlier, we were just told about Superman intervening in this Bovarian war. We don't see it. We don't know anything about how it goes down. So this long dialogue between Clark and Lois is made to explain this event. And like, why didn't they just show that at the beginning of the movie? That'd be the opening. Him stopping that invasion of another country instead of just explaining it through this long ass scene. So anyway, we learn the Bovarian dictator is being propped up by Lex Luthor because he wants the conflict to happen because he's selling weapons to them. And then we learn that Luthor wants to take over the country so he can make it his own little empire. But then he secretly supports the Bovarian invasion, hoping that Superman would intervene, making the public and US government suspicious of Superman and him intervening in an international conflict. Luthor then goes to the US government to convince them to help him kill Superman, as he sees him as a threat. Yeah, is this sounding convoluted yet? Good. Superman then fights against the mysterious Hammer of Bavaria, who we find out is a superhuman controlled by Lex Luthor. This scene was also goofy as hell, as it shows Luthor controlling the Hammer of Bavaria's actions through the fight with verbal commands. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. If you're a super genius like Luthor, wouldn't you just make some kind of AI system that could plan and react way quicker than you could just call out moves? Anyway, then later, Luthor releases a kaiju, a giant monster that attacks the city and serves as a distraction, bringing Superman together with the Justice Gang, as they're called, Green Lantern, Hot Girl, and Mr. Terrific, and they work together to beat the monster. But meanwhile, Luthor breaks into the Fortress of Solitude, using Superman's DNA. He then hacks into the message his Kryptonian parents sent him to manipulate it and release it to the public, framing Superman as having bad motives in wanting to rule over all of Earth. Superman, wanting to clear his name, turns himself in to authorities, only to be turned over to Luthor. Luthor then opens a portal to an alternate dimension called the Pocket Universe. He then imprisons Superman with a super being named Metamorpho, who can turn himself into anything, including kryptonite, rendering Superman useless. It is then up to Lois to go to the Justice Gang for help, but only Mr. Terrific agrees to go with her to save Superman. This is where that great fight scene happens with Mr. Terrific that I mentioned earlier. Luthor then plays Russian roulette, literally, with some random guy that Superman found on the street earlier in the movie and kills him. I found this part a little weird. I get Luthor's a bad guy trying to be menacing, but who the hell is this random guy he kills? Why am I supposed to care so much? Why does Superman care so much? And how's the death of this random guy convince Metamorpho to then help Superman? Why wouldn't he just help him from the beginning? Anyway, Superman, Lois, Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho break out of the pocket dimension, creating a rift into the interdimensional portal, causing a threat to all of mankind. Superman then flees to his parents' home to recover from the kryptonite, where we get a heartfelt scene with him and his dad. This scene was honestly the most emotional part of the movie, I'm not gonna lie. Then Superman heads back to Metropolis to stop Luthor and close this interdimensional rift. He fights the Bavarian Hammer again, and this time it's revealed that he's actually a clone of Superman made by Luthor. He has all of Superman's powers, but is also very dumb. So that's why Luthor has to control him manually. Anyway, Superman almost loses again, but Krypto the dog comes to save him again, and Superman wins the fight, then closing the rift and capturing Lex Luthor once for all. Do you see what I mean by there being too much in this movie? That's only the main plot I just described with Superman. There's also other stuff going on in the background with other characters that would take way too long to summarize. I liked Superman. It was an alright movie, for the most part. It had some stupid things. But back to how I established earlier that this wasn't supposed to be just any old superhero movie. This was supposed to set up an entire new cinematic universe, rebooting the whole line of DC films going forward under Gunn's new creative vision. And while it was enjoyable, it didn't feel like that kind of movie. There was just too much going on at once, too many characters involved, and we never really got established with any of them long enough. Yeah, we learn about Superman, but there's no real arc to him in this movie. He just stays the same guy the whole movie, which I guess is consistent with the traits of the character, but it didn't feel like anything changed. There were no big revelations or setup for future movies. Man of Steel had a lot of its own problems, but it wasn't trying to be too big in scale. It was only trying to establish Superman as a character and set him up to be involved in a larger Justice League movie going forward. The same thing Iron Man did to kick off the MCU. This superhero movie didn't feel like the first movie in establishing a new universe. It felt like the 5th or 6th movie in a cinematic universe that had already been established. But in this one, we were left without any setup. James Gunn's Superman was a hit. I'll give it that. It didn't flop. It didn't completely disappoint. But it also was not a home run. It didn't knock it out of the park. So we'll see going forward as more DC movies come out in this universe. We'll see how it goes. At the end of the movie, we see Supergirl, played by Millie Alcock, who will have her own movie coming up next year. This was the only real setup for a future film, and she was only in the movie for like a minute. I still believe in the vision going forward, and I do think Superman helped to keep the Superman movie alive. For now. So anyway, that was my thoughts on Superman. Let me know what you all thought. Were there any details on the movie I missed? Let me know, drop a comment. If you've watched this far, I appreciate you. Drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. Catch you next time.